There was once a king whose name was erased from every book, every temple wall, and every prayer that was ever spoken. He was not a legend or a god, as stories later told. He was real. He walked on the same earth we stand on, and his name was Alalu, the last king of an ancient race called the Anunnaki. Before history began, when oceans were wider and deserts still slept underwater, there were cities shining under the sun like pieces of heaven, towers built from stones that could glow at night, walls that hummed softly like music because they were made with energy that came from the heart of the planet. People lived under the rule of beings who were far wiser and stronger than them. The humans called them gods, but they were not gods. They were the Anunnaki rulers who came from the stars, teachers of light, engineers of life. Among them, Alalu was different. He was not cruel or proud. He saw humans not as servants, but as children learning to stand. He shared his knowledge with them, how to grow food, how to speak with stars, and how to heal the earth when it hurt. But not all the Anunnaki agreed with him. Many feared that humans were growing too aware, too independent, and too close to the truth, a truth that could break the balance of power between heaven and earth. The Anunnaki Council met in secret chambers filled with golden light. They argued for days about the fate of mankind. Some wanted to guide them. Others wanted to destroy what they had made. Alalu stood alone in his defense for humanity. He warned them that the planet was changing, that a great danger was coming from the sky, a storm of fire that would swallow their cities if they didn't prepare. But his warnings were ignored. They called him weak, a king who had lost his wisdom to emotion. Deep beneath the shining cities, Alalu walked alone through the crystal halls of his palace. He looked up at the night sky, and something strange was happening there. The stars had started to move in a pattern that no one had seen before. 3 bright lights formed a perfect line across the heavens, glowing red and gold. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. That night, Alalu felt something deep in his chest, a silent voice telling him that time was running out. The alignment of the stars was a warning, a countdown to the destruction he had feared. He knew then that everything would soon change. The earth would be shaken, the seas would rise, and the name of his people, the Anunnaki, would disappear from memory. But before the end came, Alalu made a promise to himself. If his world was meant to fall, he would find a way to protect the truth, a truth that would one day return when humanity was ready to remember. And so the last king looked at the sky for the final time, knowing that the heavens were about to break. The age of the Anunnaki was ending, and a new story, our story, was about to begin. Rise of conflict. Far above the glowing cities of earth, in a floating hall made of silver stone and living light, the Anunnaki Council gathered. The sky outside was dark and red. Storms of dust rolled across the horizon as if the planet itself could sense what was coming. Inside the hall, the air was heavy with pride and fear. The great ones of the sky sat in a circle, their eyes shining like molten gold, their voices calm but filled with anger. They spoke of humans small, fragile, and yet growing too fast, learning too much. One elder struck the table with his staff and said, "We gave them breath, but now they claim the fire of creation." Another answered, "They forget who their makers are. They think themselves equal to us." The sound of their words echoed like thunder through the chamber. Yet at the far end sat Alalu, silent, watching them all. His heart was torn between 2 worlds, the world of his people and the world of the humans he had taught to hope. When his turn came to speak, Alalu rose slowly. His long robe dragged against the crystal floor, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter, as if the room itself listened. "They are not a mistake," he said softly. "They are our reflection. They feel pain, but they also love. They fight, but they also heal. Destroying them will not protect this planet. It will only curse us forever." His words broke the silence, but not the pride of the council. Many laughed. One of the younger princes, Enlil, the son of the high ruler, stood up with fire in his eyes. "You have gone weak, Alalu. You care more for dirt than for your own blood." Alalu looked at him and answered, "It is not weakness to protect what is innocent." But Enlil's voice grew louder. "If we let them rise, they will one day replace us. That is not creation, it is rebellion." The debate turned into fury. Some stood beside Alalu, believing that life, once given, must be allowed to grow. Others sided with Enlil, calling for a cleansing, a new beginning through destruction. The council hall trembled with their rage. Outside, lightning struck across the desert sky, but the deepest wound came not from the shouting, but from betrayal. Among those who turned against Alalu was his own blood, his cousin, who had once sworn loyalty to him. Jealousy had poisoned hearts faster than any weapon could. Promises made in peace were broken in secret whispers. That night, Alalu returned to his palace and found the corridors empty. His guards had vanished. The fountains that once sang now stood silent. He knew the decision had already been made. The council had chosen to end the experiment. Humanity would be wiped clean. The flood he had feared would not come by nature, but by their own hands. He climbed the highest tower, where the air was thin and cold, and looked over the endless lands below. He could see the faint fires of human villages glowing like stars scattered on the earth. Farmers, builders, children, they had no idea that their fate was being sealed in the sky. Alalu closed his eyes and tried to reach his people through thought, sending a wave of warning across the winds, hoping someone would listen. But even his power could not stop what was already in motion. In the hidden core of the council's fortress, Enlil prepared the first divine engine, a weapon of light so bright that even the stars bowed before it. It drew power from the magnetic heart of the planet, and from something older, something they had once stolen from the heavens themselves. When it was fired, it could change the face of the earth. As the machine awakened, its hum grew louder, filling the air with a vibration that made the mountains tremble. Alalu felt it from miles away and knew the end had begun. He ran through the empty streets, shouting for his people to take shelter, though he knew no shelter could save them. The sky turned white, and the wind stopped breathing. For one silent moment, everything stood still. Then a beam of light tore through the clouds like the finger of an angry god. The ocean rose. The desert cracked. The heavens roared. The divine engine had spoken. Far away, Alalu fell to his knees, tears burning his face. He whispered, "May mercy find those who come after us." The ground shook beneath him, and the first stones of the great cities began to fall. The rebellion was over, but the punishment had only begun. Above the dying land, the stars shifted once again, marking the start of the cataclysm that would erase an age, and with it, the memory of the last Anunnaki king. The fall of the gods. The sky burned like fire. The ground shook like a living beast. The great cities that once touched the clouds were now trembling, their golden walls cracking and falling into the sea. The moment the divine engine was fired, the balance of the planet shattered. The sun turned red, and the wind screamed across mountains and valleys, carrying dust and fire through every corner of the earth. The humans looked up in fear, not understanding what was happening. To them, it was the anger of gods, but in truth, it was the beginning of the end of the Anunnaki themselves. Alalu stood on the steps of his broken palace, watching the horizon burn. The people he had taught to build, to speak, to dream, they ran in panic, searching for safety that did not exist. The rivers overflowed, swallowing whole villages. The seas rose like mountains, crashing into lands that had stood for thousands of years. The earth split open, swallowing temples and towers into endless darkness. The sky that once held the proud ships of the Anunnaki was now full of falling fire. In the council halls above, Enlil and his allies realized too late that their power was out of control. The divine engine had awakened something they could not tame. The weapon had shaken the planet's magnetic core, turning the atmosphere into a storm of chaos. What they thought would be a simple cleansing became a total collapse. The air grew heavy, the light faded, the sound of the world dying was louder than thunder. Alalu, heartbroken but unbroken, gathered a small group of his loyal followers, those who still believed in mercy. They ran deep beneath the surface, into the tunnels of crystal that lay under the oldest temple. There, he revealed a chamber that no one else had seen, a place he had built in secret long before the war began. Inside stood a round structure of stone, glowing with blue light, humming softly like a heartbeat. "This," he said, placing his hand on its surface, "is the heart of kings." It was not a weapon but a safeguard, a living device that could store knowledge, energy, and even memory. Alalu knew he could not stop the destruction, but he could leave behind a piece of the truth, something that might help those who would come after. He pressed his palm against the heart, and it began to glow brighter, sending waves of energy through the walls. The runes around it lit up, and the chamber filled with a calm light that stood against the chaos outside. As the world above screamed and burned, Alalu recorded the final message of his kind. His voice, full of sorrow, echoed through the chamber. "If you are hearing this, it means the stars have turned again. Remember us not as gods, but as those who tried to protect you. We fell because we forgot compassion. Do not repeat our mistakes." His followers wept as he sealed the chamber with a touch of his hand. The walls closed, hiding the heart deep beneath the earth where no storm could reach it. Outside, the destruction grew worse. Great floods rolled over the plains. The mountains themselves seemed to melt. The cities of the Anunnaki, once floating on rivers of light, sank beneath oceans of mud and ash. The temples of Egypt, Sumer, and the lands beyond were buried under layers of sand, and those who survived, both human and Anunnaki, were left wandering through a world they no longer recognized. High above the dying earth, Enlil looked down from his burning ship and saw what he had done. The pride that once filled him turned to fear. He realized he had not destroyed humanity. He had destroyed his own kind. The divine engine, now out of control, began to draw power from the stars themselves. A bright explosion followed a light so powerful it erased whole cities in a blink. The rest of the Anunnaki fled, escaping to the far corners of the universe, leaving the earth behind as a broken memory. When silence finally returned, only the sound of waves remained. The world was quiet again, but it was not the same. The few humans who survived crawled out from caves and mountains, looking at a sky that had forgotten their gods. They would rebuild one day, but they would never remember what truly happened. Time would wash the truth away, turning kings into myths and fire into legend. And somewhere beneath the ruins, under stone and soil, the heart of kings still pulsed slowly, waiting for anyone to awaken it. The age of gods was over. The age of man had begun, but the echo of the last Anunnaki king still whispered through the wind, reminding the earth that every empire, no matter how divine, falls when it forgets mercy. The rebirth of civilization. When the storms finally stopped and the fires grew cold, the world looked nothing like before. The sky was pale and empty, and the land was covered in silence. Mountains had moved, rivers had changed their paths, and the oceans had swallowed entire kingdoms. The great Anunnaki were gone, and the humans who survived could no longer remember how or why the world had broken. All they had left were fragments, strange dreams, scattered stones, and the deep sadness that something greater had once existed. The few who survived walked across endless plains of dust, searching for food, shelter, and meaning. They looked at the stars, not knowing that those same stars had once been watched by their teachers, the beings who had taught them how to build, how to write, and how to live. The humans could no longer understand the symbols carved into the old ruins, but somehow they still felt connected to them. They started to rebuild using whatever they could find. Stone by stone, they raised new homes, new temples, and new beliefs. And even though the Anunnaki were gone, their memory lived on quietly inside the human heart. People began to tell stories of sky gods and shining rulers who once walked among them. Over time, these stories changed into myths. In Sumeria, they called them the gods of creation. In Egypt, they became the deities of the sun and the stars. In South America, they were remembered as feathered serpents and men who came from the sky. Every culture, no matter how far apart, carried a piece of the same forgotten truth. Thousands of years passed, and nature healed the wounds of the world. Green forests grew where deserts had been, and rivers once again flowed with life. Humans spread across continents, forming tribes, kingdoms, and nations. They believed they were the first to walk the earth, not knowing that they were rebuilding upon the bones of a far older world. Sometimes they found strange ruins hidden beneath the soil, giant stones cut so perfectly that no tool of their time could have made them. They found tunnels, ancient walls, and tablets that spoke of a flood that had once ended an age. But they did not understand what they had discovered. They thought these were just legends, stories to keep children quiet at night. Yet, every time humanity advanced, a spark from the old world seemed to guide them. The way they built pyramids that aligned with the stars, the way they shaped symbols that matched the constellations, even the way they measured time, all came from memories that were not truly their own. It was as if the knowledge of the Anunnaki was written inside their blood, waiting to rise again. And rise it did. The builders of Göbekli Tepe carved massive stone circles, arranging them to match the movements of the heavens, just as Alalu once taught. The architects of Egypt raised pyramids that pointed to Orion, where the old gods were said to have come from. The Mayans built temples that counted time in cycles, mirroring the celestial rhythm that the Anunnaki had followed. None of these people knew each other, yet their minds dreamed the same dream: to touch the sky, to speak to something higher, to rebuild what had been lost. But the truth was still buried deep. The heart of kings, hidden under the earth by Alalu, continued to pulse quietly, sending out waves of energy that some could feel without knowing why. The most sensitive among humans, the shamans, prophets, and seers, heard whispers in their sleep. They spoke of great floods, sky wars, and gods who would one day return. The people laughed at them, but the dreams never stopped. Centuries turned into millennia. Civilization rose and fell again, and again. Egypt, Sumer, Greece, Rome, each believing it was the beginning, never knowing it was just another echo. The same stars shone above them, the same truths lay hidden below them, and the same forgotten power waited patiently for the right moment to awaken. And so, while mankind believed it had moved forward, it was only walking in circles, repeating the same steps written long ago by the last Anunnaki king. His promise still lingered in the wind, that one day, when humanity was ready, they would remember. As the modern world began to take shape, people dug deeper into the earth. They found walls under oceans, temples beneath deserts, and carvings older than any known civilization. Scientists called it impossible. Historians called it coincidence. But somewhere, in the quiet of night, the earth itself seemed to whisper, "You have been here before." The return of the good memory. Time moved forward, but the earth never forgot. The wind still carried echoes of the old world, and sometimes, when lightning touched the horizon, the ground seemed to remember the shape of what once stood there. For thousands of years, humanity lived without knowing that deep beneath their feet, something ancient was still alive, a heartbeat buried under stone, waiting to be found. Then came the age of discovery. Scientists began to dig into the deserts of Iraq, Turkey, and Egypt, searching for the first signs of civilization. What they found shocked them. Perfectly cut stones that looked like they were shaped by machines, carvings that showed men standing beside beings with wings and shining helmets, and tablets written in languages older than writing itself. The symbols spoke of a flood, of sky kings, and of a war between those who came from the stars. Scholars tried to explain it away as stories or metaphors, but the evidence kept growing. In 1945, a researcher in southern Iraq uncovered a piece of stone with the name Alalu, carved into it, faint, broken, but still there. Many dismissed it as coincidence, but for some, it was proof that the myths were not just stories. Around the same time, explorers in the Andes and the pyramids of Egypt found strange patterns, lines, tunnels, and energy points that connected across continents. It was as if the ancient builders had mapped the entire world using the same knowledge. And then came the satellites. From the sky, they saw things no one on the ground could. Hidden cities under the sands, circular formations under the ocean near India and Japan, patterns too perfect to be natural. Some scientists called them lost civilizations. Others whispered another name, Anunnaki. For the first time, humans started to question the story they had been told about their own beginning. How did people thousands of years ago know about the stars of Orion and Sirius? How did they move stones, weighing hundreds of tons without modern machines? How did they build temples that aligned with the solstices with perfect precision? The answers didn't fit the timeline. It was as if knowledge had appeared suddenly, fully formed, as if someone had given it to them. And in quiet laboratories around the world, a few researchers began to notice strange things in human DNA. Hidden codes, repeating sequences that did not match natural evolution. Some claimed they were signs of design of creation by hands that were not entirely human. Their work was quickly silenced, their funding cut, their names removed from publications. But the idea did not die. It spread like a whisper on the internet, in books, in secret discussions among scientists who dared to ask, what if we are the children of the stars? Meanwhile, deep in the deserts of the Middle East, a team of archaeologists found something metallic under the sand, a massive circular structure buried beneath layers of rock. It was smooth, not carved, and it emitted a faint vibration, like a soft hum. The deeper they went, the stronger it became. Some said their instruments stopped working. Others said they felt their hearts beat faster, in rhythm with the sound. They had found the resting place of something ancient. No one knows exactly what happened next. The site was closed by authorities, declared dangerous, and covered again. But one of the workers, before disappearing, claimed he saw a glowing symbol carved into the metal, a circle surrounded by 7 stars, the same design found on the oldest Sumerian tablets. He said it pulsed like a living heart. The world moved on. News faded. But strange things began to happen around the planet. The magnetic field of the Earth started to shift. The poles moved faster than ever before. Lights appeared in the sky that no one could explain. And deep in people's dreams, images began to repeat visions of shining cities, of tall beings with golden eyes, of a flood, and of a king watching the stars one last time. It was as if the earth itself was trying to remember. Some say the alignment of the stars that Alalu once feared is returning. The same 3 lights across the heavens will soon meet again. And when that happens, the energy hidden beneath the earth may awaken. The heart of kings may beat once more. Maybe that is why so many people today feel a strange pull toward the past, a desire to understand who they really are and where they came from. Maybe that is why old myths feel new again, because deep inside every human being lies a memory not from this lifetime, but from another age when gods walked beside men, and one king risked everything to protect the truth. So when you look at the stars tonight, remember that you might not be looking up. You might be looking back to the time when the last Anunnaki King watched over this world, knowing that one day we would rise again and finally remember who we truly are.